On the wedding night, the man shows off his broad, muscular chest to his stuttering young wife. The muscular hunk's physique terrified her. To avoid being physically punished by her father, the inexperienced Maxie tremblingly accepted the man's approach. "I gave you a chance to let me go. So even if you don't want to, you have to bear it." On the surface, she is the beloved eldest daughter of the Duke's family. But because of her plain looks and stutter, she was despised by her father and lived a life of being either beaten or scolded since childhood. Suddenly one day, he married her off to the commoner-born Riftan, and this was all a trap designed by her father. It was to push the task of slaying the evil dragon, ordered by the king, onto him. The price to pay was merely her, the disliked and useless Maxie. So no matter what the man did, she could only obey. Even if she was beaten, she had to endure it. If she messed up, what awaited her would be more than just physical punishment. After a night of passion, when Maxie groggily opened her eyes, Riftan had already left to slay the evil dragon, and today was his first time back since he left 3 years ago. Back then, her father just wanted to send him to his death. He never expected that not only would he defeat the evil dragon and become a hero, he also became a sword master. It's rumored that even the princess is pursuing him now, and he came back today to divorce her. The Duke heavily berated Maxie, extremely disgusted by her stutter. To think she couldn't even hold on to a man. Maxie gathered her courage and tremblingly pleaded. But what she got was another vicious beating. The Duke gave Maxie a final ultimatum. He would absolutely not allow her to be cast aside by a knight of common birth. If she couldn't even do this one small thing and brought shame to the family, she should know what fate awaited her. "I'm so useless," Maxie thought. The husband escaped death, but the wife trembled in fear. Riftan looked grimly at his little wife as she stammered a welcome home. The way she trembled all over angered the man. He suddenly grabbed her wrist. He thought Maxie wasn't even willing to pretend to welcome him. He turned away in great annoyance, thinking he was about to leave. Maxie reached out and grabbed his sleeve. But the more nervous she got, the more she stuttered. Looking at his soft, fragrant little wife, Riftan finally couldn't resist and pounced on her. He showered her with delicate kisses, but just as he was about to do something naughty, he was interrupted by his subordinate. Hearing that he had to leave immediately, Maxie thought he was leaving again. Afraid of being beaten to death by her father, she was about to stop him. But then she heard Riftan tell the maids to pack her things. Seeing her confused look, Riftan's face darkened. "Are you planning to let me go alone?" Without waiting for an answer, he grabbed Maxie's slender wrist and turned to leave. In the carriage, looking at the tall and formidable man before her, she worried that leaving without permission would displease her father. Unexpectedly, he just said, "You are my wife." She heard that the king had been trying to persuade him to get engaged to the princess. Princess Agnes was a peerless beauty and also a highly respected magician. She was called a hero in the war against the evil dragon. She should be his destined one, not a useless person like me. Suddenly thinking of their previous intimate closeness, her face turned beet red. How can this person be so shameless? Suddenly, she was attracted by the scenery outside, like an excited little fox. Hearing the man's light cough, she came back to her senses and lowered her head in dismay. "Is it so painful for you to be with me?" No, it's not like that. Or do you want to go back?" Maxie knew she had to say something. Otherwise, if she really went back, her father would surely kill her. She nervously clutched her skirt. It's my first time riding in a carriage for so long." The man was exasperated. "We don't know each other well, but I intend to spend my life with you. Yet you just tremble in fear by my side." Maxie was shocked. Spend a lifetime? The man thought she didn't take her wedding vows seriously. Maxie denied it, but for the past 3 years, you've stayed in Croiso Castle instead of his territory. This made Riftan very dissatisfied. What's more, he had sent his subordinates to fetch Maxie several times, but she never came. But Maxie knew nothing about this. The man, however, thought that the noble duke's daughter looked down on his commoner status. As the two were at a standstill, the carriage suddenly began to shake violently. It turned out they had encountered goblins that had been following them. Leaving Maxie in the carriage, he set up a barrier and went out to fight the monsters. Suddenly, a monster approaching the carriage scared Maxie, causing her to fall to the floor and accidentally fall out of the carriage. Afraid of causing trouble for everyone, Maxie tried hard to crawl back to the carriage, but a monster suddenly appeared in front of her. Just as it was about to trample her, she closed her eyes, resigned to her fate. Riftan appeared before her, defeating the monster with a few swift moves. Maxie gasped for breath as if she had just survived a disaster, and then unceremoniously fainted. In her dreams, there were only the insults of others and the cold, hard floor. Her only companion was a little black cat. Maxie suddenly woke up. She saw Riftan's worried gaze. Because she had fainted, they had to find a place to stay nearby, which delayed their journey. Riftan was quite helpless. She was fine seeing the monsters, but fainted at the sight of him. What a headache. Maxie was very worried, afraid of being seen as a burden. But the man's eyes were full of concern. He was even about to call for a doctor. Suddenly, she noticed her bare arm. She burrowed into the quilt, trembling uncontrollably. Hoo-hoo! Before she could finish, Riftan thought she was uncomfortable and turned to get her some water. Maxie peeked out from the quilt. I don't have any clothes to wear. Hearing this, the man was relieved. He told her not to be like that. After all, he had already seen everything when he changed her clothes, and he had accidentally torn her dress. At this, the formidable man's cheeks turned red. You couldn't breathe at the time. I just pulled a little in it. Besides, it was just changing clothes. The two of them had already consummated their marriage 3 years ago. Riftan sighed. You noble ladies, always fainting at the drop of a hat. Hearing this, Maxie felt very guilty. She thought he was angry and probably already regretted taking her with him, because she was unwanted by anyone. Just then, a bowl of steaming hot soup and a piece of barley bread were suddenly pushed in front of Maxie. The man awkwardly spoke words of concern. It made Maxie's heart suddenly feel warm. Hey, why did you take me with you? Hearing her words, the man gritted his teeth. What do you mean? She thought Riftan was forced to marry her in the first place. If he wanted a divorce, it would be better to do it now. After all, if she were abandoned now, she could still go back. The man's face was terrifyingly dark. You want a divorce? He lost control and grabbed Maxie's shoulders, thinking that while he was out risking his life, she had fallen for someone else. She tremblingly denied it. She told him what she had heard, the rumor that he was going to marry the princess. Tears fell like strings of pearls. He suddenly swept her into his arms. You'll be the death of me. He gently kissed the teardrops from her eyes. He buried his face in her neck, murmuring softly, I don't know where you heard that, but I've already refused. In Riftan's eyes, marriage was a sacred vow that could not be betrayed. Even so, Maxie still felt uneasy. Is the rumor just your excuse? Do you actually want a divorce? She shook her head desperately, afraid he would misunderstand her. Riftan lightly touched her forehead. As long as you don't, with a beauty in his arms. Riftan couldn't remain composed, especially since he had been holding back for so long. He found her soft lips and kissed her. The formidable man pressed his little wife beneath him, seeking pleasure. Just looking at her sent a jolt through the man, making him almost lose control. He led her to the bed, and with a shy smile, the lights went out. The sunlight streamed into the room, illuminating the messy and ambiguous scene. Maxie still felt a little dazed, thinking about what happened last night. Her face flushed with heat. She gently stroked his hair. 3 years ago, when Riftan left her, he had also made a great resolution. Maxie never dared to think that he would be so cold after leaving her. Riftan held her tightly in his arms, nuzzling her gently. I was going crazy waiting for you to open your eyes, feeling his intimate touch on her body. Whenever he was with his little wife, he couldn't control himself. He squeezed her slender fingers, desperately wanting to do it again. It was just as the saying goes, the night was warm and passionate, making a king forget his duties. He had gotten a taste for it and wanted more. A loud knocking came from outside the door. Commander, please get up. You can do the rest when we get back to the territory. The man gritted his teeth in frustration. He turned to see Maxie shrinking back into the quilt, trembling uncontrollably. Riftan had a bit of a headache. I'm very impatient. If you don't tell me, how will I know what's wrong? Maxie peeked out, her cheeks flushed. Dude, did they all know what we did? The man burst out laughing, looking at the girl's shy and innocent beauty. He gently planted a kiss on her forehead. My innocent noble lady, don't be shy. We are husband and wife. This is perfectly natural and right. Amidst the incessant knocking, the man gritted his teeth and got dressed. Riftan thoughtfully prepared a new dress for her. Maxie looked at herself in the mirror. What a beautiful dress. When Riftan burst in, he was met with this beautiful sight. He went forward to help her dress and comforted Maxie for the grievance she had suffered. The dress was bought in a hurry and was a bit plain. Riftan didn't know that this was already the most gorgeous dress Maxie had ever worn. After all, what she used to wear were the scraps left over from her noble sister's dressmaking. She was not the kind of noble young lady Riftan imagined. She was afraid he would be disappointed when he found out. She followed him through the noisy crowd. She could feel his subordinates' dislike for her. Although Riftan kept defending her, Maxie still felt down, but she could understand. After all, they were all forced to be on this expedition because of her father. Riftan saw this and spoiled his wife to no end. These bastards are really damnable. But looking at the man who was even angrier than her, Maxie couldn't help but lift the corners of her mouth, feeling a tickle in her heart. The man was stunned by her smile. He suddenly moved closer to her. "This is the first time you've smiled at me." Accommodation was inconvenient during the journey. They only got one small wooden cabin. Riftan wanted to clear out a room for Maxie, but as he turned, his sleeve was tugged. "If I do that, everyone will hate me even more." She blinked her big eyes. "I don't want to be alone." There was a dead silence. The subordinates tactfully made themselves scarce. Riftan cleared his throat. "Then let's go to bed early." Maxie was mortified. Looking at the people coming in and out of the cabin, she hadn't expected this situation. She watched as the man thoughtfully laid out the bedding. He even prepared a steaming hot baked potato for her. She suddenly felt that this moment was more delicious than any grand meal she had eaten in Croiso Castle. Maxie felt the man's warm breath on her neck and shoulders, feeling a little nervous. "If everyone is here." The man planted a kiss on her. "No one cares. Don't move. It's warmer this way." The subordinates could only collectively play dead. "The commander is really something else." The young, white-haired knight grumbled, holding an oil lamp. "The lady is so embarrassed. You should at least be considerate of her." The man coaxed his innocent little wife to bathe with him. He had wanted to take the opportunity to taste some more sweetness, but the fatigue from days of travel made Maxie drowsy. The sexually frustrated lord could only channel his desire into domination, fiercely training his soldiers. The sudden appearance of Ruth turned Riftan into a cat with its fur on end. He didn't want him near his little wife. Ruth complained wildly. "Even a stray dog on the street isn't this possessive." Ruth also gave Maxie a small gift, a firestone with warming magic. Maxie was full of gratitude for his kindness. Holding the firestone in her hand, she felt an unprecedented warmth. For the next few days, they were constantly on the move. But Maxie felt Riftan's distance from her. He had used excuses not to sleep with her for several nights. This made her feel uneasy, thinking he had grown tired of her. The man ordered a rest on the spot. Taking advantage of their time alone, Maxie decided to apologize to him. I'm sorry for bothering you." Riftan was bewildered, a look of confusion on his face. "You always sleep alone at night. Are you tired of me?" The man felt very frustrated that he had made her think that way. He grabbed Maxie's wrist. He strode deeper into the forest, pinning her against a tree and closing in on her. "Just being near you, I can't help but want more." Maxie's eyes widened, her cheeks flushing. Sleeping separately was just to control his animalistic desires that could arise anytime, anywhere. Because they had to hurry, Maxie had to ride the same horse with him. Faced with the sudden appearance of monsters, everyone remained calm. The younger knights charged in to fight without a second thought. After comforting Maxie, Riftan also joined the battle, finishing them off cleanly, one by one. The group continued to advance towards the territory at full speed. Finally, in the afterglow of the sunset, they saw a peaceful, prosperous, and hopeful territory. "Maxie, that is my territory, Anatole." Under the sun, Riftan was full of pride, explaining the details of the territory to Maxie. "But it looks a bit desolate, not as magnificent as Croiso." But Maxie didn't think so. She found it incredibly grand and vast. Riftan had spent many years and a lot of money to build this city wall, so ordinary monsters couldn't get close. Ruth chimed in from the side. "It's hard to say after being away for so long." The people cheered, welcoming the young dragon-slaying hero and the Rem Dragon Knights. They were the guardians of Anatole, deserving of the highest welcoming ceremony and heartfelt cheers from everyone. This moment made Maxie's heart beat faster unconsciously, a completely different feeling from her time in Croiso Castle. The people there were all afraid of her father. Two scantily clad young women caught Maxie's attention, almost making her dizzy. Riftan declined to attend the welcome party, telling them to have fun. He had more important things to do now. He took Maxie back to the castle and solemnly introduced her. Upon entering the desolate room, the man flew into a rage. He had sent a message back long ago, telling them to decorate the castle more lavishly. Now it seemed far from satisfactory. The tense atmosphere made it hard for Maxie to breathe. She unconsciously thought of her father's insults and reached out to grab the man's sleeve. I want to rest. Seeing the constantly trembling Maxie, Riftan gently picked her up. Don't be afraid. I'm not angry with you. Ignoring her struggles, he carried her back to the room in front of everyone. The room was satisfactory enough for him. The new, high-quality furniture was countless times better than her room in Croiso Castle. But Riftan only felt apologetic, afraid that Maxie would find it shabby. He just wanted to give her the best of everything. His tone suddenly changed. Damn it. Managing the castle was supposed to be your job. If you had come earlier, it wouldn't have become so dilapidated. As soon as he said this, Maxie flinched. The blaming tone reminded her of her father again. She closed her eyes tightly, waiting for the physical punishment to come. The pain she imagined never came. Riftan knelt in front of her, saying he would hand over the management of the castle to her. She could spend as much money as she wanted, as long as she liked it. The man's gaze was deep and firm. Are you willing? He gently lifted her chin. From now on, this is your home. Maxie's eyes trembled slightly, a strange feeling passing through her heart. I will do my best. Maxie thought that Riftan believed she was a young lady who had received a noble education, so he would entrust the castle to her without hesitation. But she had never managed money or ordered servants. She was afraid of Riftan finding out the real her, afraid he would discover that the wife he had worked hard for 3 years to marry was a useless person who couldn't do anything. She could only keep cheering herself on internally. Get to work. She looked up and saw the man's bare upper body, his seductive gaze fixed on her. Later, they bathed together. Maxie curled up in the water. She pondered the truth of the man's righteous claim that a husband and wife should bathe together. Riftan stared at her, his gaze naked and aggressive. He suddenly caressed Maxie's smooth cheek, pulling her into his arms and playing with her long hair. I'll wash you. He planted a trail of soft kisses on her fair back, then whispered in her ear. It made Maxie unconsciously relax and doze off again. The man looked at her, a little helpless. She really fell asleep. When Maxie groggily opened her eyes, it was already broad daylight. Aileen was the personal maid Riftan had arranged for her. From her, she learned that Riftan had gone to the training grounds early in the morning. Feeling her gentle touch, it was a world of difference from the servants who used to pull out a handful of her hair when they combed it. Aileen dressed her up like a princess. She really wanted Riftan to see. The training grounds, where are they? Aileen didn't react for a moment. She cautiously asked if Maxie was feeling unwell somewhere. She felt her face flush with heat. She turned and ran out. She was afraid of being laughed at, so she subconsciously wanted to hide. The butler, Sejor, came to greet her. Maxie tried hard to compose herself. She didn't want them to notice her stutter and look down on her. Sejor was a kind old man and offered to show Maxie around the castle. He explained the origin of Anatole to her. Because monsters often appeared in this area and the population was small, it had been unmanaged for a long time. Until 10 years ago, when Riftan became the lord here. He began to build the city walls, blah, blah, blah. The butler's long-winded explanation was filled with pride. It made Maxie feel that Riftan was truly beloved. Regarding the castle's desolation, Sejor felt ashamed. In the time that followed, Maxie witnessed the castle's gloomy banquet hall, the desolate courtyard, the cold kitchen. Only then did she fully understand how dilapidated the castle was. And the formidable lord, due to his sexual frustration, was training his soldiers with murderous intent. It made people miserable. However, all of this ended the moment he saw Maxie. He revealed a gentleness and softness that no one had ever seen. The younger knights witnessed their double-standard lord and felt a deep sense of malice. Facing such a commander was less pleasant than facing monsters. Riftan's eyes couldn't help but steal glances, only to find Maxie turning to leave. He strode towards her and grabbed her wrist. Why are you leaving already? Without even calling me. With a wave of his hand, he let the soldiers rest while he took Maxie for a tour of the castle. She felt a little embarrassed and apologized to the man. I troubled you yesterday. Mentioning this made Riftan feel exhausted. Having a beauty in his arms that he could see but not touch. It was simply one of the greatest tortures on earth. Riftan took Maxie up to the city wall to overlook his territory. Afraid she would be bored, he initiated a conversation. However, it was this small gesture that made Maxie mistakenly believe in her heart that Riftan was a great flirt. After all, people were always talking about his handsomeness behind his back. His level of attentiveness made Maxie's heart flutter and also made her feel more inferior. Following Riftan's instructions, Aileen brought Maxie ginger tea and apologized for what happened in the morning. Facing the fragrant, soft, gentle, and beautiful lady, Aileen was incredibly moved. After all, before this, she had to face a group of rough men every day. Her enthusiasm gave Maxie a strange sense of familiarity. Because there was a banquet to attend in the evening, Aileen suggested giving Maxie a new look, determined to make her a woman who could conquer the world with her beauty. The gorgeous dress and sparkling jewels seemed out of place in this castle, making her feel inexplicably anxious. She even suspected they had been used by his former lover. Maxie cheered herself on in her heart. She stepped into this lively and boisterous world. Riftan solemnly introduced his wife to his subordinates. His eyes held a threat. Treat the lady with the utmost respect. The subordinates' cheers made Maxie feel uncomfortable. Seeing her anxiety, the man switched to feeding mode. The subordinates quickly mingled, all begging Riftan to tell the story of slaying the dragon. Everyone was full of admiration for him. This harmonious and cheerful atmosphere couldn't help but stun Maxie. The banquets she was forced to attend in Croiso Castle were always suffocating. In her father's eyes, this scene would be improper, but Maxie felt the room was full of life. Being in such an environment made her happy unconsciously. The man's warm fingers brushed against her skin, toying with her necklace. His gaze towards her was dark and unreadable. In a noisy crowd, such a simple touch made her heart race. Riftan's fingers continued to tease, and with a large hand, he pulled her into his embrace. Maxie's cheeks flushed, and she called his name with a trembling voice, causing the string of tension in the man to snap completely. He pulled Maxie away early, and as soon as they were out the door, he pinned her against the corner and kissed her. This was to punish her for looking at other men. Saying this, he once again blocked Maxie's soft lips, his large hands roaming over her body. It made her tremble. He picked her up and strode towards the bedroom. For the first time, Riftan discovered how many stairs there were in the castle. He pressed her onto the bed, his eyes filled with desire. He took off his shirt, revealing his sexy abs. A night of passion. It demonstrated the man's unspoken love. He loved everything about Maxie. Even her long hair, which was once disliked, was even more precious in Riftan's eyes. Because the man said he liked it. When Aileen was combing her hair, she chose a style that let it hang down over her shoulders. Maxie worked hard to become a qualified Lady Calypse, studying account books and familiarizing herself with the affairs of the city. Meanwhile, Riftan was busy inspecting the territory, leaving early and returning late for days on end. Then came her first task as the lady of the territory, receiving merchants and starting to discuss the details of renovating the castle. When it came to professional knowledge, the merchant talked endlessly. A wide variety of types, novel styles. Maxie's head was spinning. After sending the merchant off, the tailor Riftan had found to make clothes for Maxie arrived. After a whole day, Maxie was exhausted and swaying. To renovate the castle lavishly would be very expensive. Maxie wasn't sure. Could she really spend such a large sum of money freely? And she didn't know how to calculate the costs. While she was thinking hard, she ran into Riftan, who had returned late. He took out the wildflowers he had hidden. Blushing, he presented the flowers to her, much to Maxie's surprise. The rare sunny weather during the rainy season lifted Maxie's spirits. The continuous rain had kept Riftan busy, and the two hadn't slept together since the banquet. Thinking of this, Maxie's cheeks turned red. She had been buried in the study all day recently. She had no idea how to manage the castle and had to maintain her composure in front of the servants at all times. It was truly exhausting. However, the thought of having dinner with Riftan today made her instantly ecstatic. But then she heard arguing outside the dining room. Regarding Riftan's delay in going to the capital for the celebration, his subordinate disagreed. This was a blatant disregard for His Majesty and would cause unnecessary trouble. Riftan was annoyed. This was his first time home in 3 years. However, it was a well-known fact that His Majesty was trying every means to summon Riftan to the capital. Coupled with the matter of Princess Agnes, Riftan didn't want to be tied to the royal family, but repeatedly defying His Majesty would surely make him lose face. And he was a man who held grudges. He shouldn't have gone to the Duke's territory in the first place. He should have gone directly to the capital. Hearing the reason for their argument, Maxie's spirits fell. She made an excuse of not feeling well and turned to leave. After returning to her room, she kept thinking about Riftan leaving in 3 days. So much so that she didn't notice the man's arrival. "You went out at dawn again today. You must be very, very tired. It's good that the weather has cleared up," Riftan murmured in a low voice. "I wish the rainy season would last a little longer." Watching the man fiddle with the long sword in his hand, Maxie was worried and afraid that he would leave without a word like on their first night. Feeling her gaze, the man asked in confusion, "Is there something you want to say?" The question of when he was going to the capital reached her lips, but she swallowed it back down. Dryly, she said, You cherish your sword very much, don't you?" Riftan had developed the habit since he was 14, never letting anyone touch his sword. This was from the first swordsmanship competition he participated in. It's a top-class, famous sword. Hearing him mention the swordsmanship competition, Maxie's eyes lit up. Her father would occasionally take her sister, but for her, it was something new that only existed in novels. At the swordsmanship competition, valiant knights would kiss beautiful, noble ladies. Thinking of this, she asked, "So, has Riften ever been kissed?" As soon as she said it, the man froze, and Maxie's face turned beet red. She had said it by accident. She nervously explained it was a scene she had read in a book before. The knight receives a kiss from the princess after winning. In Maxie's eyes, a kiss from a noble lady was the highest honor for a knight. But Riften couldn't understand. After all, he was of lowly mercenary birth. He didn't understand what honor there was in kissing those women who frowned the moment they saw him. Maxie fell silent. Riften stood up abruptly, intimately touching her forehead. "Are you not feeling well? You don't look so good." Maxie's face flushed. "And no, I'm just a little tired." The man pointed to the model on the table. "What's this?" "A model of a sculpture for decorating the banquet hall." After saying it, she was afraid he would think it was unnecessary and quickly said, "Or maybe we should just forget it." The man lifted her long hair. "No, I will hold the most magnificent banquet for you." Riftan was afraid he wasn't giving Maxie enough, making her feel wrong. He promised to bring her a cart full of gifts when he returned from the capital. Mentioning this topic made Maxie's spirits fall. She didn't want to be left alone. The man buried his face in her lap like a spoiled child. "I really don't want to go." Years of campaigning had exhausted him. He just wanted to rest well for a few months or even a few years. Maxie's eyes were filled with heartache. She raised her hand and gently placed it on top of his hair, ruffling it. Cheer up. Riften's expression froze. The desire he had managed to suppress surged like a waterfall. He grabbed her calf, his eyes filled with lust. Maxie trembled, her cheeks flushing. Meanwhile, the subordinates were having fun imitating Riften's angry look. It was incredibly lifelike, but their admiration for him hadn't diminished in the slightest. The blonde-haired man genuinely felt that sometimes he didn't even seem human. Ruth had been with him the longest. He recalled the first time they met. Riftan was only 16. Back then, he was even more daring and reckless than he was now. It was as if he lived for today with no thought of tomorrow. With their separation imminent, the man reluctantly kissed his little wife in public. Her words, "I'll wait for you to come back," softened Riften's heart. With the departure of the knights, the empty territory seemed even more desolate. Sejor saw the change in Riften. This was the first time he had heard the Lord say something like he would be back as soon as possible. And it was all because of Maxie. Anatole was once abandoned. It was because of Riften's arrival that the residents could settle here. He rebuilt the territory, fought monsters, and used his personal wealth to build the city walls, all to protect the safety of the residents. But every time he left, it was without a sound. But since Maxie came here, Riften truly began to consider this place his home. Feeling their sincerity, unease once again crept into Maxie's heart. What if they found out she was a useless person who couldn't do anything? Would Riften, and these people who were so enthusiastic towards her, turn on her as ruthlessly as her father did? With Riften's departure, Maxie, who had been in a constant state of tension, fell spectacularly ill. The gentle and soft-spoken care made a pang of sourness rise in Maxie's heart. She couldn't help but want to indulge in this warmth. In order to return home sooner, the man traveled nonstop, choosing sparsely populated shortcuts. As one can imagine, he encountered many monsters along the way. Maxie, who grew up under suppression and disdain, had never felt the joy of a family's love and care. In order not to disappoint Riften, she decided to make a change, starting with managing the castle well. However, the ideal was grand, but reality was harsh. Ruth looked at the quotation with a bit of a headache. Lord Riften would probably go bankrupt soon. A few days ago, Maxie, who was sighing in the library because she couldn't understand the bills, was caught red-handed by the magician Ruth, who was hiding there to catch up on sleep. One look and he was shocked. "How much money have you spent these past few days?" At the mention of this, Maxie felt guilty. But Riftan said not to worry about her money. There has to be a limit to not worrying. Ruth was on the verge of a breakdown and then began his private tutoring. He tapped his fingers lightly on the table. "If you really can't handle it, you can ask Sejor or someone else for help." Maxie flinched. "Absolutely not. Besides, Lady Ruth, you said you would help me." He was speechless. How did he get so wrapped around this couple's fingers? The moment Riftan was mentioned, Maxie became more talkative, praising him endlessly. Ruth was forced to witness a huge public display of affection. Wrong, it's all wrong. He took a deep breath. "Let's stop here for today. If I look at this any longer, I'll probably be angered to death." Ruth saw the landscaping plan for the courtyard in the proposal. That would inevitably require pulling out this dead oak tree. However, the people of Anatole believe that spirits reside in trees. So even if one is dead, they would never cut it down easily, especially an oak tree. Seeing Maxie's bewildered look, Ruth told her the legend of Waigru. God gave him a holy sword, and he ended the ancient dark wars. Legend has it that after completing his mission, he flew into the sky on a white dragon. For the people of Anatole, the legend of Waigru has a more special meaning, because legend says the reason Waigru rode the dragon away was the hillside outside Anatole. The people here grew up listening to the legend of Waigru, and the story of the hero Waigru falling in love with an oak tree spirit is also very popular. So the people here believe the spirit is still waiting here for Waigru. If we were to pull out the oak tree, we would probably be disliked. Privately, of course. Maxie was silent for a moment, caught in a dilemma. Ruth glanced at her and sighed softly. "I'll see if I can save it." After a period of teaching, Maxie barely passed. Ruth then explained the different values of different currencies. Among them, the most valuable currency in the world is the Darien, made of orichalcum. There are only 600 in the entire continent, and 160 of them are in Lord Riften's hands. He found them in a monster's lair in a canyon 6 years ago. At that time, he was like a man possessed, frantically searching for treasure. There were originally 200, but he later used 40 to build the city walls, repair roads for the village, and renovate the castle. Mentioning this made Ruth's heart ache. Only 20 were needed, but because he was in a hurry to finish, he paid the workers double the price. Maxie was shocked by Ruth's legacy. After spending time with him, she discovered that this person became quite terrifying whenever money was mentioned. Crystal fountains, marble floors, all canceled. So, under Ruth's constant nagging, Maxie found the gem merchant to try to reduce the order. Speaking of which, under Ruth's private tutoring, Maxie's progress was unusually slow, but she was still barely competent for the job of the Lord's wife. Everyone in the castle was full of energy and anticipation. Although the proposal for custom-made furniture for the whole house was rejected by Ruth, the necessary wall lamps and fireplaces were all there. Maxie had a certain air of authority when directing the servants, but she still felt uneasy in her heart. She constantly checked the account books to avoid any mistakes, although she wasn't sure if Riftan would be happy to see the changes in the castle. But since even Ruth said it was not bad, then it must be not bad. Thinking of this, Maxie's gloominess was swept away, and she went off with her head held high to check the supplies needed for the castle to get through the winter. She recorded everything, trying to grow into a qualified leader. But when she was alone, even the wind blowing past her made her miss Riftan terribly, and at the same time, an equal amount of anxiety arose. He was the hero who saved the continent. At the banquet, he would win the favor of many noble ladies. Would such an outstanding person regret his marriage to her? 2 apprentice knights interrupted Maxie's thoughts. It was Yuri and Garo, whom she had seen at the banquet. Learning that Maxie was alone, they willingly offered to accompany her, wanting to risk their lives for her. This was completely different from the terrified feeling she got when she saw Uslin and the others. Yuri was simply overly lively and made no secret of his admiration for Riftan. It made Maxie want to learn more about him as well. Listening to Yuri talk endlessly about Riftan's deeds, he had successively defeated 2 of the knights who were hailed as Roem's Waigru. He was his idol. Even before he slayed the evil dragon, he was already an outstanding knight. When Maxie was asked in return if she had seen Riften in action, she couldn't help but boast. "Oh, of course I have." Although she had fainted, it still counted as seeing it. She didn't want others to say she didn't know her own husband. In a moment of excitement, she loudly declared, "I saw with my own eyes Riften slay a giant the size of a castle." Under the admiring gazes of the two young knights, she got carried away. She made a wild boast. Vividly, she colorfully spun a tale for the two inexperienced boys. The story was passionate, her expression firm. If you weren't there, you'd easily be fooled. Just as she was getting into it, a faint voice came, making Maxie's whole body go rigid. She turned her head and found Ruth under the oak tree not far away. His gaze towards her was unreadable, making Maxie's little heart pound. She had just wanted to brag a little, but now she had gone too far. Listening to Ruth's teasing words, Maxie just wanted to disappear on the spot. But she was pestered by Yuri and the other to continue the story. She looked around awkwardly. Out of humanitarianism, Ruth helped her out of the predicament and handed her a letter. He told Maxie that Riften would be back in 10 days at most. She thanked him and hurriedly prepared to escape this troublesome place. Ruth nodded in understanding. I know, you're very busy." His words hit Maxie right in the heart. Hearing news of her beloved made her feel exceptionally warm. Even a sharp-tongued Ruth seemed more pleasant to look at. However, when she saw him in the library again, she couldn't help but frown. Ruth was screening the order list Maxie had compiled. He really couldn't understand. Preparing lamp oil and candles was one thing, but where were all these soaps and essential oils going to be used? Hearing they were for the knights, he rejected them all. A little floral scent would be enough to suffocate those guys. Looking at the book list Ruth had clipped to the order form, Maxie flatly refused this act of lining one's own pockets. You can't use the budget to buy things you want for yourself. Ruth launched into a lecture. Knowledge is priceless. It's not to satisfy personal desires. Besides, anyone has the right to read in this library. Maxie's mouth twitched, recalling his endless nagging. Free to read? This is just a lie. Even she, the lady of the house, had to watch his mood when she came here. Ruth used improving his magic as another excuse, but Maxie saw right through it. The books you wrote down aren't even magic books. Ruth really didn't expect her to know. Seeing that his lecture wasn't working, he quickly changed his tactic. Does the lady hope that her future children will be idiots who only know how to wield swords and spears? As soon as he said this, Maxie's body stiffened, and she slowly turned around, her face flushed. While saving the oak tree, Ruth gained a group of fangirls and unexpectedly discovered Maxie's affinity for magic. Everyone in the castle was preparing to withstand the cold winter. Unexpectedly, an accident happened. A nobleman claiming to be from Libidin arrived with 30 fully armed knights. Taking advantage of the Lord's absence to specially strengthen ties made one doubt his intentions. Maxie tightened her grip on the reins, her heart heavy with worry. The man on horseback refused to show his identification, but forced them to open the gates to welcome him. As the only master of the castle present, Maxie had to bear the responsibility of dealing with this. Looking at the crowd below, Maxie couldn't stop sizing them up. The man pressed on, claiming to be Lord Robern from Western Libidin, here specifically to make a friend. Maxie cheered herself on in her heart. Citing the rule that he couldn't enter the city without showing his identification, she rejected his unreasonable request. But she was mocked by the man for her slurred speech, making Maxie's face flush with shame and anger. Yet he was still relentless, seeming as if he wouldn't give up until he entered the city. The hot-tempered Heberon was provoked, which was exactly what the man wanted. The next second, he launched an attack on the city gate. The barrier Ruth hastily set up was easily broken by the crowd. From this, it was clear they had come prepared. Knowing this would be a fierce battle, he told Maxie to hide. In an instant, the scene was chaotic. Everyone was fighting each other. Robin had a sinister smile on his face. He raised his sword, but upon seeing the banner raised high in the distance and the Rim Dragon Knights, he froze on the spot. Riften's face was grim, his aura powerful. Maxie stumbled and fell to the ground. Her body trembled so much she couldn't move. Ruth pulled her up and handed her over to the gatekeeping soldier, watching them break through the gate. A look of bewilderment crossed Maxie's face. The villagers were hiding everywhere, their peaceful lives shattered. Maxie felt she should do something, not just abandon these people and flee for her life. But she was met with a firm refusal from Ruth. "You should hide quickly. The lady can't do anything right now." Maxie helplessly let go of his sleeve. She stumbled as the young soldier pulled her, but then she heard the villagers' cheers. Seeing her long-awaited beloved, she felt an unprecedented sense of security. Seeing their lord, everyone was moved to tears. Riftan had an overwhelmingly powerful aura. His gaze swept over them, making them tremble. "It seems we had guests while I was away." The knights surrounded them. "Do you know what to call guests who come without their host's invitation?" Uslan and Heberon chimed in one after another. "Uninvited guests, Commander. I think robbers is more accurate." Riftan's expression was bloodthirsty. "Daring to cause trouble on my territory. Your courage is commendable. Your tombstone will be inscribed with, dedicated to the foolishness and audacity that fears no death." Seeing his life was in danger, Robert explained his identity and purpose, shifting the blame to the soldiers who were protecting Anatole's territory. Because they wouldn't let him into the city, a small friction arose. Riftan's eyes narrowed. Before him were the ruined city walls, the injured soldiers, and the complete mess. He let out a cold laugh and closed in on Robert. "You call this a small friction?" He suddenly drew the sword at his waist and pressed it against the man's neck. His voice was filled with coldness. "This is war. There is no clearer declaration of war than this. In return, I will cut off your head, leave my army to smash your city gates, and destroy everything in sight." Hearing his words, Robern's face showed alarm. Until this moment, he had not realized his mistake. He still foolishly thought he could use the Seven Kingdoms Agreement to suppress Riftan. The implication was that if he died, war would be inevitable. He never expected the man not to fall for it. Just as Riftan was about to end this dog of a man's life with one strike, he was stopped in time by Ruth, who had run over. If he really is a nobleman from Libidan, killing him here would probably cause unnecessary trouble. Riftan was very dissatisfied with Ruth's intervention. No matter what, he had to be dealt with immediately. Only then could his anger be appeased. The knights all echoed his sentiment. Ruth scratched his head. "Doing this will only create friction with Libidan. And besides," he suddenly spread his hands. "Are you willing to dirty the eyes of the noble lady?" As soon as he said this, Riftan's eyes flickered. "What did you say?" He turned his head and saw Maxie sitting slumped beside a soldier, staring at him without blinking. The man gritted his teeth, his anger flaring up. His face was grim. "Why is my wife in a place like this?" Ruth was helpless. "There's a problem in the territory. Isn't it natural for the lady to mediate the dispute on your behalf?" Riftan tightened his grip on his sword. "Die here or surrender. You choose." Robert hesitated for a moment, then they all threw down their weapons. Riftan was very angry about what Maxie had done. The words he spoke were particularly harsh. "What did you possibly do by running out here?" Maxie instantly deflated, unable to refute. She really couldn't do anything. Riftan pulled her onto his horse, and after giving clear instructions, he led her into the city. Seeing the person who had treated her so gently suddenly become so cold, the words of apology Maxie wanted to say instantly welled up. The brand new castle she had wanted to show him, she couldn't bring herself to mention it now. Until they entered the bedroom, Riftan remained silent. Maxie wrung her hands. When she spoke, her voice was choked with tears. The man turned and strode towards her. He pulled her into his arms and showered her with kisses. He was terrified. What if he hadn't arrived in time? Thinking of this, Riftan roared loudly. "You shouldn't have come out in the first place." Then he seriously warned Maxie that no matter what happened, she must not put herself in danger. Seeing his little wife nod obediently, Riftan leaned against her wearily. The moment he saw Maxie slumped on the ground, he felt all the hairs on his body stand on end. He greedily inhaled her scent. Maxie reached out and caressed his cheek, knowing he wasn't angry, just worried about her. Her heart felt completely full. I'm sorry for scaring you." Riftan pulled her away a little, scanning her up and down. "Are you hurt anywhere?" The man tilted his head. "Let me see." The blunt words made Maxie's cheeks flush. Riftan moved closer, untying the sash of Maxie's outer robe. "I need to see with my own eyes that you're unharmed. Otherwise, one scratch, one head." The man breathed lightly on Maxie's chest. Seeing the red mark on her shoulder, he gritted his teeth. One of those guys just lost his head. The man picked Maxie up and threw her onto the bed. His large hand slid under her skirt. Maxie let out a muffled groan. He stopped, looking at the wound on her knee, and felt a surge of fire. For this wound alone, they should all be executed. Thinking of what Robern said about facing war if he was killed, Maxie sat up abruptly. I fell on my own. Riftan clenched his fists. They invaded my territory and hurt my wife. Whatever punishment they receive, they brought it upon themselves. Maxie's voice was choked with suppressed sobs. If there's a war, you'll have to go far away again. You just got home. As soon as she said this, Riftan froze. He cupped Maxie's face and kissed her deeply and earnestly. The man had been away from home for many days. His homesickness was light. As soon as he returned, he had an in-depth discussion with his little wife. The low, elegant words and ambiguous sounds touched off a boundless spring passion in the hibiscus curtained bed. The man's energy was too abundant, causing Maxie to drift off into a drowsy sleep. When she woke up groggily, Riftan had already returned from interrogating the intruders. Looking at Maxie's lively eyes, the man generously admitted his love. If it weren't for official business, he wouldn't have been willing to get out of bed. Maxie's heart was filled with anxiety. Has he been interrogated? Her hands unconsciously gripped the sheets. Is he really a phantom noble? To verify his true identity, the parish inquisitor was specially invited. He is indeed a nobleman from Libiton, but he is not a spirit master. He's just a minor character. After his half-brother snatched the position of heir, he stole the family heirloom and fled all the way here. Riftan's idea to provoke Maxie was probably because he heard she had dug up a huge treasure and he had malicious intentions to enter the city. The man caressed Maxie's ear. Watching her ear gradually turn red, he was in a very good mood. But he was also unlucky. He would never have dreamed that Riftan could rush back to Anatole from the capital in 8 days. Thinking of this, the man couldn't help but curse. He should have had their heads cut off and displayed to the public. Maxie gently placed her hand on the man's arm, causing him to pause for a moment. But he had to admit the battlefield was nothing like the divine days he was having now. With a warm, soft beauty in his arms, who the hell would want to go to war? So he contacted Rober's father. The son's debt is paid by the father. He told him to control his son and also demanded some compensation. The man is a warrior who can slay dragons and a lover who can be cute and affectionate in bed. Maxie smelled the rose scent in Riftan's hair and couldn't help but chuckle. The man was a little embarrassed, thinking that the scent was nice and that she might like it, but also worried that Maxie would think he wasn't manly enough. Before this, she thought he would be as fierce and terrifying as her father. But now, she found him to be surprisingly cute. Maxie cupped Riftan's cheeks. She pulled him closer and placed a kiss on his lips, which made the man pause slightly. I like it very much. Faced with Maxie's rare, proactive affection, Riftan couldn't control himself. He fiercely captured her lips. The overwhelming, powerful scent of hormones made Maxie's bed rise. He pushed her down onto the bed. It seems I'll be using this scented soap for the rest of my life. As soon as Maxie stepped into the dining hall, she saw Ruth and Uslan. The group hesitated for a moment. Then Ruth greeted her with a pained expression, asking about her injuries. He also pulled out a chair for her. Maxie had always heard that unless there was something special, the knights usually ate in the dormitory dining hall. She didn't expect to run into them like this. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. She took the opportunity to ask about Riftan's whereabouts. Ruth looked troubled. The city gate was destroyed, so he wanted to deal with it. And after this incident, he, who was already obsessively dedicated to defense, planned to install a defensive magic device. And the most miserable one was Ruth. To make that device, he was so tired his bones were about to fall apart. But at this moment, he looked at Maxie with shining eyes. My lady, you know basic mathematics, right? Sensing that Ruth was up to no good, she remained silent for a moment. Then she stiffly changed the subject. This is quite delicious. Ruth stared blankly. Is this how you repay my kindness? In short, Maxie, who mocked herself for her shallow learning and lack of ability, was no match for the cunning Ruth with his 800 schemes. Even Heberon couldn't stand it anymore. That's enough. How can you be so rude to a noble lady? However, Ruth was selective, staring at Maxie without blinking. In the end, she was defeated and agreed to Ruth's request. Breaking the awkward atmosphere, Heberon also started a conversation. In contrast, Uslan's attitude remained cold. As they left, Maxie's mood dropped a little. Ruth sighed. The Rim Dragon Knights were, after all, schemed against by Maxie's father, Duke Croiso. Although the result of the dragon subjugation was good and their fame spread far and wide, they also nearly suffered heavy losses. And all of this was because he forcibly pushed the mission onto Riftan. And as his daughter, she didn't do the bare minimum for her husband, who was forced onto a path of no return. The knights who followed Riftan always had such missions, so their unfriendly attitude was understandable. Ruth's words made Maxie's retort die in her throat, whether she knew about it back then or not. So many years have passed. There's no point in talking about it now. But she still couldn't help but think. They must think I was the one who pushed Riftan into it and then ignored him. The pensive Maxie was interrupted by a servant. "The Lord is looking for you." Just hearing news of him made Maxie feel as if the sky had suddenly brightened. In the bustling garden, a beautiful little white pony appeared in Maxie's sight. This was a gift the man had carefully selected for her. She couldn't hide her joy, yet she was cautious. Can I really accept it? In Riftan's eyes, only Maxie was worthy of riding such a beautiful pony. She shyly praised it. "This is the best gift I've ever received." Under the sun, her whole being seemed to glow, making it impossible to look away. He couldn't help but raise his hand to cup the back of her head and kiss her soft lips. Maxie was like an opium poppy, making him addicted. Riftan perfectly demonstrated his boyfriend power, laying out a whole cart of gifts prepared for his darling wife before her eyes. Walking through the newly renovated castle, Riftan praised her very seriously. The emotional validation was perfectly delivered, making up for the small hurt in Maxie's heart from yesterday. In his furious state yesterday, he really didn't have time to think about other things. The man patted her head to comfort her. He invited Maxie to unwrap the gifts with him. The gorgeous dress made her look even more petite, but Riftan believed it was because of him that Maxie couldn't bring the jewels and clothes she used in Croiso Castle with her. So even if he had to squeeze out time, he would do his best to compensate. Unexpectedly, a single sentence touched a thorn deep in Maxie's heart. Her heart was full of joy, but she forced a smile. Whenever Riftan treated her like a noble princess, she felt like a fraud. After the man left first because of the captives, Maxie sealed and stored the remaining gifts one by one. Then she went to check on the stored food for the winter in the castle and ran into Yuri, who had skipped training to sneak out for a snack. The group was busy, and in the blink of an eye, night had fallen. Although it was busy, it was also fulfilling, unlike the lifeless existence in Croiso Castle. But darkness and loneliness often catalyze the deepest fears in one's heart. She didn't understand why Riftan, after not only scheming against and using her, was still so good to her. But even so, she wanted to do everything in her power to grasp this happiness. The morning light fell on the curtains. Maxie stared without blinking at the man sleeping soundly at this moment. His handsome face looked a little tired. Quietly slipping out of the man's arms, he had rushed back without a moment's rest and hadn't been able to sleep soundly. She gently played with the ends of the man's hair. Hearing his soft whimpers, she couldn't help but chuckle. The great hero who slayed the dragon had no idea that his image in his darling wife's heart was actually adorable. In order not to wake him, Maxie quietly left and went to the dining hall, ready to enjoy a warm breakfast. Unexpectedly, she was interrupted after just one bite. Ruth, with dark circles under his eyes, spoke with a resentful voice. "How lucky you are to be enjoying breakfast early. I've been starving since last night to complete this special task given by the Lord." Maxie protested in a small voice. "I was too busy yesterday." Busy opening gifts? She couldn't help but retort to Ruth's accusation. And Ruth already had a firm grasp of Maxie's temperament. Lord Calypso values the safety of the territory and its residents the most. "If you help me finish early, my lady, the Lord can also rest easy sooner." Sure enough, as soon as Riftan was mentioned, Maxie would compromise. But when she saw the mess of symbols in the library, she couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. Ruth handed the basic operations over to Maxie. He only needed her to draw the patterns on the tools more precisely. Looking at the scattered blueprints on the table, her understanding was once again refreshed. She originally thought that magicians only needed to chant a few spells. Ruth explained, "The kind you're talking about is simpler transformation magic. Advanced magic often requires hours of preparation." Looking at the intricate blueprint in her hand, Maxie felt as if she had opened the door to another world. She was filled with curiosity, and Ruth explained as much as he could to her. Holding the heavy magic stone in her hand, it felt like peeking into another world. Her whole life, Ruth clasped his hands together. "Satisfied your curiosity? Now let's get to work." After his guidance, Maxie quickly got the hang of it and performed even better than Ruth had expected. He praised her without reservation. Their collaboration was perfect. Suddenly, there was a loud crash. The servant said, "You've been here since early morning." Riften appeared in the library with a dark face. He was dissatisfied with the lady of the castle being ordered around by Ruth. After all, being around him was dangerous. It was either explosions or fires. Ruth was speechless at his assessment. However, under Maxie's careful coaxing, Riften compromised. If you want to help, then help. And he warned Ruth, don't even think about any dangerous experiments. Then with a wave of his large hand, he pulled Maxie into his arms. That's enough for today. You can work hard on the rest yourself. The man took her hand, ready to take his darling wife on a date, and let Maxie experience her beautiful little pony. Aren't you tired? Let's go back to the room and rest. Riften chuckled. I'm not old. I'm not at the age where I need to lie in bed and rest. The man teased Maxie at every opportunity. The look in his eyes was full of adoration. If we must spend time in the bedroom, understanding the man's unfinished sentence, Maxie's face flushed. She shyly buried herself in Riften's arms. Maxie sat stiffly on the horse's back. Because she had always stayed in Croiso Castle, she had few opportunities to ride a horse. Riften naturally knew this. Rumor had it that the eldest daughter of Duke Croiso was frail and sensitive and disliked appearing in public. And Duke Croiso was one of the most powerful men, so naturally, many people were interested in his daughter. Moreover, Maxie was completely different from her sister, never showing her face, which made people even more curious. Riften said that he had once met a knight who, unable to contain his curiosity, secretly snuck into Croiso Castle. Maxie tightened her grip on the reins and said self-deprecatingly, then he must have been very disappointed. After all, he took a risk to see an ordinary woman like me. She even felt she couldn't be considered ordinary. Riften suddenly moved closer. How could that be? You are so cute and charming. His eyes were filled with passionate sincerity. Sensing Maxie's evasive gaze, the man whispered in her ear, otherwise, how could I be so intense in the bedroom? Haven't I already praised your beauty with my actions? Walking on this mountain path was a rare moment of leisure for Riften. The way Maxie shivered caught his attention. Slowly approach, cross your legs, and relax. Keep your balance. Just like sitting on my lap. As soon as he said this, Maxie's cheeks flushed red again, so nervous that she avoided Riften. You can't say things like that. How could the man let her go so easily? He enjoyed every opportunity to tease his darling wife. I really don't know what you're so shy about. In bed, Maxie stumbled and almost fell. Riften quickly wrapped his arm around her shoulder. The words he spoke were also full of doting. Galloping on a mountain path, feeling the cool autumn breeze, Riften suddenly remembered. When he once went to Croiso Castle, he saw Maxie sitting in the courtyard, gently stroking a cat on her lap. The little thing was purring, looking very comfortable. And this gentle and serene scene remained in Riften's heart for many years. Walking and chatting allowed the two, who rarely communicated, to understand each other better. Riften reached out and broke a branch in front of Maxie. Everything about Maxie seemed to be veiled in mystery, and she almost never brought it up herself. So Riften didn't really know her. But today, the sunlight and the atmosphere were just right. The man decided to ask directly, what do you like? What do you hate? What do you usually think about? Tell me everything. Riften, at this moment, displayed the spirit of chivalry. He was the first to open up. He likes horses and strong liquor, delicious and filling food, gold, gems, honor, and so on. He likes most things that men like. He hates liars the most, and useless people. A single sentence made her face quietly change. When it was Maxie's turn, and she tried to brush it off, Riften saw through her. She had to answer honestly, but when it came to things she hated, Maxie paused for a moment, pursed her lips. I hate myself. Under the man's stunned gaze, Maxie rode her horse forward, clearly not wanting to continue this topic. In a vast open space, only here could Maxie feel that she was free. She panted slightly, feeling her heart beat. Riften easily lifted her down. The two sat under a tree, listening to the wind and watching the falling leaves, free and leisurely. He raised his hand to block a gust of wind for her and took out a small flask of liquor he carried with him. Watching Maxie take small sips, the man's eyes darkened. Feed me. She brought the flask to the man's lips, watching his Adam's apple move. Riften wiped his lips. After a moment of hesitation, he still asked, why do you hate yourself? Maxie asked back, have you never hated yourself? The man paused, silent for a moment. Countless times, but never to the point where, when asked what I hate, the first answer that comes to mind is myself. Riften looked at Maxie seriously. He gently kissed her forehead. That's because you have no reason to be hated. Hearing his darling wife's praise, Riften's lips curved up slightly. You are the strongest knight in the world, tall and very smart. Although she was shy, she couldn't stop praising Riften. Maxie couldn't help but steal a glance at the man. Seeing his sharp, well-defined features and his eyes full of gentleness, it was easy to get lost in them. Maxie's cheeks turned red, and very handsome. However, this point made Riften suspicious. If that's the case, why did you tremble like you'd seen an ogre every time I went to Croiso Castle? It was as if you were about to flee in terror if I got any closer. Maxie looked around guiltily. Because you're big and your expression is cold. Riften instantly fell into self-reflection. What about now? Are you still afraid of me? Getting an affirmative answer, he pulled his darling wife into his arms. The kiss caught Maxie completely off guard. She pushed him away. The man approached with a smile. Don't worry, it's just the two of us here. Don't be afraid. Saying that, he once again kissed Maxie's soft, cool lips. Feeling the man's touch, her body couldn't stop trembling. Amorous sounds filled the empty field. Riften easily rested his forehead against hers. Don't worry, Maxie. Don't be afraid of me. I will never let you get hurt again. The man's scent was like the winter wind, dry and cold, filling her up. As for when Riften had hurt her, and why she was afraid of him, she couldn't remember anything at all. The man just wanted to be close to his darling wife every day. Whenever he had free time, he would stick to Maxie's side, his love passionate and bold. Everyone in the castle knew. After a period of study, Maxie's progress surprised Ruth. The work of creating the defensive magic device was also in its final stages. This period of study allowed Maxie to understand magic better, and naturally, she became more curious about Ruth's origins. He was once a magician from the World Tower. Although in legends, even young ladies who never left their homes had heard of the World Tower's great name. In reality, the high-ranking magicians there were subject to many restrictions. They even had to spend most of their lives in the tower. So after Ruth escaped from there, he met Riften. At that time, he had just become a mercenary, and Riften was already very famous. Listening to Ruth's memories helped Maxie understand him better. The 16-year-old Riften was a fearless youth. He took on ogres single-handedly and broke dragon bones with his bare hands. Thinking back now, Ruth still couldn't help but frown. Just listening to it made Maxie's heart race, mostly with worry. But the current Riften was already very strong. He could easily deal with most monsters without having to do such dangerous things. Except for the time he went to subjugate the dragon. Hearing this, Maxie trembled slightly and asked the question that had been bothering her. What exactly happened during the dragon subjugation? To put it simply, Riften used his special ability to temporarily absorb the dragon's magic power, turning it into sword energy that split the dragon's head in two. And this act was undoubtedly a gamble with his life. If he had miscalculated by even a fraction, Riften would have turned to ash. Maxie felt a roar in her mind. She had no idea that behind the heroic deed praised by people, there was such immense danger. He really could have died at any moment. If that had happened, Maxie would never have understood. She would have been forever trapped in that dark room in the mansion, with her tragic memories of their first night. But it wasn't over. After winter, Riften would still have to go on expeditions by royal decree. This was his duty as a subject and a knight. Only now did Maxie realize that the peace and happiness she thought she held in her hands were so precarious. In 2 days, I'm going on a subjugation mission. The man's words completely shattered the already uneasy Maxie. Her hands unconsciously clenched. She quietly asked where Riften was going. I heard there's a group of goblins on the other side of the mountain. I plan to station there for 4 or 5 days to completely eradicate them. His darling wife's question, will it be dangerous, made the man's eyes widen, and he suddenly burst out laughing. Maxie, you're not worried I'll be taken out by those goblins, are you? Riften said seriously, although it's a bit troublesome, it's not dangerous. It's only a little trickier than hunting rabbits. Maxie hesitated and said, if it's not dangerous, we can just leave them alone. The man interrupted her with a grave expression. Protecting this land is my duty. Maxie, are you asking me to neglect my duty? She stood there stunned. Although goblins have low magic power, their reproductive ability is astonishing. If they are not eradicated now, they will eventually become a major threat. She apologized helplessly. The man reached out to his darling wife. I'm not angry at you. Come here, Maxie. The man's cheeks suddenly flushed red just from receiving a kiss from his darling wife. He was even more reluctant about the upcoming separation. They were affectionate in front of the servants without any reservations. Could it be that Luddies is also part of your play? Even though they had a disagreement about the goblin subjugation, the man still paid attention to Maxie's sensitive thoughts. He held his darling wife tightly in his arms. He thought she was afraid of a repeat of the Libidin attack on the city gate and kept comforting her. The new defensive magic device will be completed tomorrow, so we'll be safe even if he's temporarily away. He didn't want to sleep on the cold, hard ground instead of a warm bed either, but he had things he had to do. The man held his darling wife and fell into a peaceful sleep, but Maxie couldn't close her eyes for a long time. Falling in love with someone starts with feeling sorry for them. Even though she knew Riftan was omnipotent, she still couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Maxie, who had never felt loved since she was a child, was always trying her best to love others. Ruth's test of a defensive magic device was as grand as ever. Only in this way could everyone know that even without Riftan, Anatole was absolutely safe. This was not just to test its performance, but also to reassure the people. Riftan still had other things to do. He left Maxie with Ruth and Heberon. The two bickered and argued all the way, which Maxie found amusing. On the way, they stopped by the market in Anatole. Ruth returned with 2 large bags of herbs, fully loaded. As they were about to leave, Maxie's attention was drawn to a nearby stall. Were these colorful braided cords? Ruth turned around to see an empty space. She was gone. These are decorative items tied to the shoulder strap. A sudden voice made the hair on Maxie's neck stand on end. She turned to see Heberon seriously explaining to her. It is said that wearing it on a sword can receive the blessing of the elves. But Maxie had never seen it on Riftan's sword. That's because he would never rely on such a thing. At Heberon's suggestion, she picked one to give to Riftan. Maxie envied their unrestrained way of getting along and also looked forward to it, the day she would be accepted by them, bit by bit. Next came the sweet private time for the young couple. His darling wife's silk-like hair wrapped around his fingertips, 100 kinds of lingering affection. She showed off her handiwork. The man's face was asking for praise. Maxie gently planted a kiss on his cheek, which made Riftan even more reluctant to go on the subjugation mission. He gazed at his darling wife with deep affection. "Wait for me to come back," Maxie hesitantly called out to him. She held the colorful braided cord she had bought in her hand. Heberon said that tying it to the shoulder strap would bring the blessing of the elves. Maxie's cheeks were slightly red. Although Heberon paid for it, I was the one who picked it. Seeing Riftan's lack of reaction, her heart pounded nervously, and she wanted to pull her hand back. "You don't have to force yourself if you don't like it." The man suddenly grabbed Maxie's slender wrist. "Give it to me." Under Maxie's incredulous gaze, Riftan's blush spread from his ears all the way to his cheeks. He pulled his darling wife into his arms. "I'll be back as soon as possible. Wait for me." A single sentence reawakened Maxie's deep feelings of reluctance. Tears streamed down her face, and she regretted even more not having seriously prepared a gift for him. This hero, loved and praised by all, was so satisfied with this small ornament, just because of the woman's uncontrollable vomiting. The man thought it was disgust from a noble lady. His fragile heart immediately went online, and he drove her away. Just as Riftan left Calyp's castle, it was attacked by monsters, resulting in heavy casualties. Maxie followed Ruth to help with the treatment. Although she was not favored since childhood, she was still the daughter of a noble duke. Naturally, she had never seen such a cruel and bloody scene, but she still endured the discomfort, following Ruth's instructions step by step to stop bleeding and bandage wounds. She assisted Ruth when he performed healing magic. When his magic light lit up, Maxie suddenly realized that she had always thought healing magic was colder than ice, bone-chillingly cold, heart-wrenchingly painful. But the light in front of her was so warm and gentle. Even though she tried her best to endure it, when she smelled the scent of burnt werewolf corpses, she finally couldn't help but throw up. Even so, all she could think about was quickly preparing the friends Ruth needed. Gable suddenly appeared behind her. "Are you all right?" When he saw clearly that it was Maxie, his face showed surprise. Why would Lady Calypso be in a place like this? His gaze shifted, and he saw the vomit at Maxie's feet. His expression suddenly changed. A noble lady shouldn't be in a place like this. He indiscriminately wanted to send Maxie back to the city. He even warned her not to do these useless things anymore. As Gable was about to call someone to send her away, Maxie stood in front of him with a serious expression. Thinking of Gable's intimate expression, she gathered her courage. As the lady of the castle, it is my responsibility to lead the rescue efforts when there is a problem in the territory. Why does Gable have to accuse me of doing useless things? As soon as she said this, his face froze. Don't mind me. Go to your own thing. After saying that, she turned and left, leaving Gable stunned on the spot. Maxie's heart pounded. She was afraid he would think she was an arrogant person, but then she thought, it doesn't matter even if he does. They already disliked her anyway, so even if they disliked her more, it wouldn't be any different from before. She kept comforting herself in her heart. This is nothing, but a sour feeling still welled up in her heart, because Anatole had been isolated for a long time. It wasn't until Riftan took over that it slowly began to be accepted again. So currently, Ruth was the only magician. He could only rest for a short time before continuing to treat the wounded. Maxie, the little assistant, came online, delivering medicine, applying hot towels, and cleaning wounds. After a whole day, she was so tired she felt like she was seeing the sun. Although she was tired, Ruth taught her a lot, and she learned a lot of knowledge. Lady Calypse. With a call, Maxie turned her head and saw Gable standing in front of her. He awkwardly handed a bowl of steaming hot soup to Maxie and bowed to her, which made Maxie pause for a moment. My lady was right. I was presumptuous. I sincerely apologize to you. Maxie suddenly felt as if the gloom in front of her had been swept away. The man returned from the subjugation. He caught his darling wife, who flew into his arms, kissed her soft lips that he had longed for, and urgently picked her up, turned, and left. Although it was freezing cold at the moment, her body felt a wave of heat. The experience of the monster attack made her worry about the predicament of having only one magician, Ruth, in the city. So she decided to learn some knowledge about healing in case of emergencies. However, the greater the expectation, the greater the blow. After reading books for a few days, Maxie felt that she recognized every word. But when they were put together, she just couldn't understand. Actually, she knew that doing this might not be very meaningful. Even if she understood some shallow healing techniques, it wouldn't be of much use. But doing nothing would only make her more anxious. The reason was actually very simple. She was never the noble and elegant lady that Riftan perceived her to be. She was afraid that once he discovered this fact, all the love he was giving her now would disappear like a mirage. This anxiety tightly enveloped Maxie. So if she could be of even a little use, even if she were to be tired of in the future, she could still hope for a chance to stay by his side. At this moment, her longing for Riftan reached its peak. Only by his side could the anxiety in her heart be dispelled. Ruth's sudden appearance made Maxie's heart panic with fear. Learning that she wanted to learn healing arts, she was mocked for overestimating her abilities. However, Ruth's reaction was unexpected. That's a great idea. When Ruth discovered that Maxie actually knew the ancient language, his opinion of her was once again refreshed, and he made a bold suggestion. How about you learn magic? Why didn't I think of that sooner? He suddenly became excited. If she could use healing magic, he would also have a much easier time. Maxie's heart was grateful. I can't do it. Seeing her hesitation, Ruth analyzed it for her logically. You already have an affinity for magic, and you know mathematics and the ancient language. This already meets the basic qualifications for learning magic. Maxie was moved by what he said and repeatedly confirmed with him. There's nothing to lose anyway. Ruth was like a hunter setting a trap, waiting for the rabbit to enter the cage. He patiently guided her and finally caught her in his net. If Ruth is willing to teach me, I will definitely study hard. The road of one person is destined to be lonely and difficult. But as long as there is hope, there is a glimmer of light. She imagined that one day she could become a magician like Ruth, summoning wind and rain, defeating the bandits who invaded Anatole, and becoming Riftan's pride. She couldn't help but yearn for this scene. Compared to Ruth's passionate speech, Maxie was full of question marks and couldn't understand it all. The constant setbacks made her want to give up. But in order to become the better version of herself she dreamed of, she still chose to continue working hard. Everyone shines in their own field. When talking to Maxie about magic stones, Ruth was completely immersed. He gave Maxie a stone that could cultivate affinity and a basic book on learning magic. When she heard the horn of the returning subjugation team, Maxie lifted her skirt and ran out quickly. The man's cold, unapproachable aura, the moment he saw his darling wife, melted into a face full of tenderness and affection. Maxie flew into his arms. It made him stumble for a moment. Before Maxie could take a closer look, he held his darling wife's slender and soft waist and lowered his head for a light kiss, greedily taking in her scent. However, the moment he saw them, Maxie let out a sharp cry. She was then bound in a strong embrace. As soon as the man got close to his darling wife, he just wanted to be crazily close to her. After being away from home for many days, he was now like an arrow on a bowstring. The ambiguous and seductive look in his eyes made one's face flush and heart race. He just wanted to dote on his darling wife. The wine's strength revealed a dragon's passion, and the embroidered quilt was overturned in a flurry of red. He licked the tear at the corner of Maxie's eye, feeling a wave of sweetness. No matter how excessive he was, she silently endured it. In Maxie's perception, as long as the husband desires it, he has the right to demand it from his wife at any time. Seeing the man's pained expression, she cupped his face. It doesn't hurt. He smiled mischievously, holding his darling wife's soft, boneless hand. He caressed Maxie's smooth back. Now I'm going to get serious. A sudden knock on the door interrupted the intimate scene. A scary voice came from outside. The thought that they might have heard everything made Maxie want to die of embarrassment. The man leaned against the bathtub, showing off his impressive chest and abs. He played pitiful and acted miserable to coax his darling wife into bathing him, easily manipulating her. Maxie hesitated as she approached and was pulled into the bathtub by the man for a French kiss. Feeling his deep affection and obsession, he wanted to kiss every inch of her body. Like a shower of rain, a panic stream. Maxie lay exhausted on the bed. This time, she really didn't have the strength to move even a finger. The man's kiss on her shoulder startled her. "Aren't you tired at all?" Riften looked at her with a gentle gaze, licking away the moisture and playing with the ends of Maxie's hair. "The mountain has been cleared. I won't leave before winter is over." He held his darling wife's fingers in his palm. "We can relax for a while." He promised to take her to see the unique scenery of Anatole in winter. Feeling Maxie wriggle closer to him, it made the man chuckle. This moment of warmth filled his once shattered world. But in one deep night after another, he would still suddenly wake up, panicked by the possibility of being abandoned. Every night of passion will be paid for with a morning of being unable to get up. The man finished his patrol. He mysteriously took Maxie out. Looking at the 3 kittens in front of her, Maxie was lost in thought for a moment. When Riften suggested bringing them back to their room, her face lit up with surprise. This was the first time she had kept cats in her room. She rarely talked about herself. Her mood unconsciously dropped. "My father doesn't like animals, so not even hunting dogs were allowed in Croiso Castle. And when she was very young, Maxie used to secretly huddle with a dog in the backyard for warmth. That was her only support at the time." Riften looked at her seriously. "Maxie, here, you don't have to hold back whatever you want. I said I would let you live the same life as in Croiso Castle. I'm living even better than that time." But the man's promise was like a thorn in Maxie's heart. "It's very good now." Riften looked at her with an unreadable expression and sighed deeply. Watching her feed milk to the 3 little ones, he felt a strange sense of gratification. Seeing that Maxie's attention was all on the kittens, the man felt neglected. He suddenly called her name. Maxie stopped looking at them. He patted his thigh, his voice seductive. "Come sit." The man resorted to seduction to compete for attention. He successfully held his darling wife, his face full of smugness. She was drawn to him as if bewitched. The sound of the burning firewood, the warm and gentle air, the man's strong arms, all made Maxie feel at ease. Riften pursed his lips and spoke softly. "In Anatole, is there anything inconvenient or is anything missing?" Maxie shook her head without any hesitation. "I like it here." The man gently kissed her smooth forehead without a word, but the arms holding her kept tightening. Maxie could feel his anxiety. He was worried that the pampered young lady of Croiso Castle would not be satisfied with life here. She knew very well, if she told the truth, he wouldn't be so anxious. But she didn't dare to be sure how he would face her, his wife, if he knew the truth. "It's very good here." The man was half convinced. The city walls are magnificent and sturdy, which is reassuring. The castle is built on a mountainside, and you can see the whole valley from the window. Most importantly, The chef at Calyp's castle is good. At the mention of this, Maxie's eyes lit up. The man looked at her dotingly. Maxie was still chattering on. She was very happy at every mealtime, so much so that she had gained weight. But this was something she would never say out loud. Riften's thin lips brushed past her cheek. It was less a kiss and more a breeze caressing a flower. It's great that the food suits your taste. His warm palm kneaded Maxie's earlobe, making her tremble slightly. She rested her head on the man's broad shoulder. When the mood was right, they were about to do something naughty. However, they were always interrupted at the crucial moment. The knock on the door made the man furious. Gable came to inform Riften that the people for the meeting had arrived, and Luddy's was to dress and style Maxie for the evening banquet. Watching them busily lay out the long-prepared dresses and jewelry, they were full of high spirits, determined to make Maxie stun everyone at the banquet. After trying on all the dresses, they finally settled on this white one, which made her look very elegant and noble. So beautiful that Maxie could hardly recognize herself in the mirror. Watching their meticulous service, she was very moved by their thoroughness. In the cold wind and snow, the light from the banquet hall was soft and warm. The hall was even more lively and peaceful. As soon as Maxie stepped into the banquet hall, Yuri was like an obedient big dog, wagging his tail at her, eagerly recounting his experience following Riften on the subjugation mission, chattering endlessly. When interrupted, he turned into a winner. Then he eagerly prepared to take Maxie's cloak. She suddenly hesitated. She was afraid that being dressed too grandly would seem exaggerated. She braced herself, closed her eyes tightly, and took off the cloak. After a moment, she quietly opened her eyes. She found that the previously noisy hall was silent. Yuri instantly turned into a praise machine. "Oh my God, my lady, you are too beautiful. You were charming enough before, but today you are simply dazzling." As expected of the wife of the world's #1 knight, Lord Calypso, he didn't hide his amazement, praising Maxie until she was embarrassed. A tall man suddenly appeared behind Maxie with a wine glass. Heberon's tone was teasing. "Long time no see, my lady." His darling wife's fancy confession made him so excited he misspoke. His large hand slid over her skin and kissed her soft lips. After greeting her, Heberon naturally sat down next to Maxie. Watching Yuri dutifully feed him, he chewed with big mouthfuls, his eyes full of satisfaction with the food. Heberon found it amusing and poured her a glass of wine. Maxie didn't refuse. Gulp, gulp. She finished it in one go, which stunned the man. It instantly opened up his meridians. He poured her glass after glass. Everyone was drawn over. Amidst their calls of Commander's wife, Maxie completely let herself go. A moment later, her cheeks were flushed, her body swayed, and she was still muttering, "Another glass." The drunk Maxie was fierce, a completely different person from her usual self. After hearing from Heberon that drinking could make her taller, she accepted all offers. Just as she was getting into it, her wrist was suddenly grabbed. The man's face was dark. "What are you all doing?" Seeing his darling wife smiling and saying she wanted to grow taller, Riften glared at the crowd. "Someone explain this to me." Heberon smiled apologetically. "Well, we just saw that she could hold her liquor well, and we got carried away." The man slammed the wine glass on the table. "So you used my wife for your entertainment." He wanted to say more, but seeing Maxie looking sleepy, the man scooped her up. A wicked smile flashed across his face. "All members of the Night Order, listen up. Eat and drink well today. Tomorrow, there will be a place for you to use your strength in the training grounds." He left behind a chorus of wails. He turned and left. On the way back to the room, the man was still gritting his teeth in anger. Maxie suddenly planted a kiss on his neck, smiled at him, and then fell asleep in the next second, leaving the sexually frustrated lord in a mess in the wind. Maxie groggily opened her eyes. She felt like her head was about to explode. Then she heard a teasing voice. "You're finally awake, Miss Drunkard." She saw the man with his broad shoulders and narrow waist standing against the light. He stepped forward and grabbed his darling wife's wrist. "Maxie, I'll only say this once. If I ever see you getting dead, drunk in a pile of men again, I'll make sure you can't get out of bed for a while." Seeing his darling wife's dazed look, although he really wanted to punish her on the spot right now, he still had one important thing to do. Ruth smiled and greeted her. "Hello, Lady Calypso. Did you grow taller overnight?" A single sentence made Maxie's face explode in red. Furious words aside, teasing aside, studying was the real business. In the blink of an eye, it was dusk. The results were remarkable. Ruth had a unique persistence when it came to teasing Maxie. After the lesson, he suggested that Maxie go to the dining hall for a meal so she could take the opportunity to break the ice with the knights. After all, everyone was very interested in what happened last night. When Riftan came in, the two were at a stalemate. The man's face was dark, and his words were filled with jealousy. "It's so late. What are you two doing here again?" He put his arm around Maxie's shoulder. "Let's go. I had dinner sent to our room." Ruth was slightly puzzled. "Not going to the dining hall." The man smiled without smiling. "They're all collapsed in the dormitory. They said they can't move a finger. I had to have the servants send the food over." Hearing this, Ruth felt a chill. "What on earth did you do?" The man's face was full of cunning. "I just saw that they had a lot of pin-up energy and nowhere to release it, so I just had them train a little." Seeing Rifton's silent expression, Maxie thought he was still angry about last night and quietly apologized to him. But the man suddenly tightened his grip on her hand. "Every time you come to the library, you're with that guy." Maxie didn't react for a moment. "Ruth is here most of the time, so we often run into each other." Hearing Maxie say that Ruth had taught her a lot and had also helped her a lot when she first came to the castle, the man's face showed displeasure. He hesitated and said, "Maxie, do you like smart men?" As soon as he said this, Maxie was petrified on the spot. Her face instantly exploded in red. The more nervous she got, the more she stuttered. "Riftan, it's not what you think." Her fingers gripped a book tightly. Although she felt ashamed, she still said it. "I still prefer a man like Riftan, who is steady, reliable, and also very gentle to me." He was embarrassed by his own inexplicable jealousy. He suddenly lifted her up, his large hand sliding over her skin. He kissed her soft lips. The man, full of misunderstanding, after receiving his darling wife's fancy confession, pinned her against the wall for a French kiss. The kiss, with the lingering taste of lips and teeth, had never been so fierce. A sudden noise separated the two. Seeing the blushing maids, Maxie died of embarrassment on the spot. Given that the people she spent the most time with every day were either the maids or the magician, and he, her husband, spent the least amount of time with her, the situation was very unreasonable. The man held her hand and kissed it devoutly. "Maxie, what I mean is, at least when I'm with you, don't pay attention to others." He looked at her with a serious and affectionate gaze. Maxie's heart raced as he looked at her. She felt her heart beating at her fingertips. Everything unrelated to him automatically left her world. When she got up with her messy hair, Riftan was already fully dressed. He gently planted a kiss on her lips. Deep winter arrived. As she spent more time in the castle, Maxie also got to know him better. His preferences were all very simple, as could be seen from his monotonous style of dress. But his simplicity did not include Maxie. He wanted Maxie to wear gorgeous long dresses and precious gems, to live a luxurious and comfortable life under the meticulous care of the maids. It seemed that these things had a special meaning for him, as if contempt and admiration for the nobility coexisted in his heart. But the thought of her clumsily imitating others and the difference between her and a real noble lady made her heart panic. Ruth interrupted her daydreaming. "Focus, my lady." Liddy's prepared tea for the two of them. After knowing that Riftan cared about Ruth, she would bring Ludi's with her every time she came to the library. But these two always gave her a feeling of incompatibility. When Ruth mentioned the magic perception training, she was a little discouraged. There was no progress at all. Although he was a little surprised, he still comforted her not to be anxious. And it was only then that Maxie learned that people with such a strong perception of magic as her were usually cultivated from a young age, repeatedly exposed to magic, to develop such a constitution. In a flash of lightning, Maxie felt a roar in her mind. So it was because she was physically punished as a child, and then healed by magic over and over again, that she had such a result. She unconsciously tightened her grip on the cup in her hand. After a moment, she comforted herself again. It doesn't matter how it was formed. The key is how to use it. After a period of study, Maxie was already very familiar with the structure of magic. With a loud crash, Riftan made another grand entrance. He strode in. "You're here as expected." He lifted Maxie's hair, his clear eyes dark. "You've been cooped up here since early morning again? The night is long. The darling wife is alluring." Her rare initiative made the man's restrained eyes turn red. Pity the Bodhi water dripping from the low tree, seeping into the two halves of the red lotus. Learning that Maxie had been in the library all day, the two had a small argument. In Ruth's eyes, it was all a show of affection. Riftan arrogantly planted a heavy kiss on his darling wife's face. If you don't like it, don't look. Saying that, he was about to pull her back. Maxie felt that going back to bed in broad daylight, if people knew, it would be very embarrassing. She used the excuse that she hadn't finished her book and didn't want to go back. Seeing her insistence, the man who was about to compromise, his expression changed when he saw the exquisite patterns on the book. His gaze turned dark as he looked at the materials spread out on the table. Are you learning magic? His deep voice sounded. Ruth was a little surprised. You didn't know? My lady started learning magic with me a few weeks ago. I discovered that the lady has a talent for this, so I've been teaching her little by little. Before he could finish, the man slammed the book on the table. His expression was grim. Who gave you permission? Ruth was stunned and hesitated for a moment. Why didn't you tell me? Not expecting him to be so angry, Maxie didn't react for a moment. Ruth, thinking Riftan was worried Maxie was in danger, prepared to explain in detail. I won't teach her any complex magic, just some simple defensive and healing spells. If the lady learns them, it will be a great help to Anatole as well. The man angrily cut him off. I don't need her help. The look Riftan gave her made her body tremble involuntarily. Maxie, I brought you back, but not for you to give me any help. I just want you to live a peaceful and prosperous life. Magic is difficult and physically demanding. For the first time, Maxie was so insistent about something. I won't do anything dangerous. She looked at him earnestly. I just want to be helpful. The man gritted his teeth. I told you I don't need it. Seeing her pale face, he suddenly realized that in his anxiety, his words had been too harsh. He wanted to explain, but unexpectedly, the moment he touched her shoulder, Maxie's whole body flinched. The fear in her eyes, like a startled deer, was a heavy blow to him. He was silent for a moment, then turned to leave. Do as you please. After the argument, Riftan didn't return to the room until very late. A baseless panic she hadn't felt in a long time swept over her again. Tossing and turning, she couldn't figure out what had gone wrong. He was the one who had said he hated useless good-for-nothings. The sudden sound of the door opening made her whole body tremble. A crystal-clear teardrop hung at the corner of her eye. The man walked to the bedside and stood there, head down without a word. He suddenly reached out and wiped the tear from her face. Maxie abruptly sat up and grabbed his hand. She stared at him, a few tears welling in her eyes, which made the man freeze. Maxie, his young wife, traced her fingers over his abdomen, making him tremble slightly, guiding his innocent bewilderment. Under her fingers, his affection turned to confused passion. Maxie stared at his unshed tears, a piteous sight. He apologized in a trembling voice. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Looking at the person curled up before him, he couldn't help but tremble, his lips quivering. He fiercely pulled his delicate wife into his arms. Her understanding made the man's heart ache with regret. His large hand continuously stroked her red hair. It's not your fault. If you want to learn magic, then learn. You can learn whatever you want. Just don't be afraid. Even though Maxie said she wasn't afraid, the man, thinking of how his delicate wife trembled at his approach, was filled with self-reproach. Damn it, you had just started to smile at me. Now we're back to the beginning. Maxie lowered her head and was silent for a moment. Tears fell thick and fast. I'm not scared. It's because you said you don't need me. I wanted to help, but I just caused you trouble. Riftan frantically helped her up. It's not like that, Maxie. But she was terrified of the feeling of not being needed. I just want to do something. The man held her shoulders, his spirits low. You don't have to do anything. He looked at Maxie's helpless eyes. He stared for a moment, then squeezed his eyes shut. He wrapped one arm around her waist and kissed her. You can do whatever you want as long as you're happy. You're the one who can turn away at any time. The one who's afraid that if you turn away, you'll never come back is me. Maxie gently rubbed his palm. It was still cold. You were outside for a long time. The man helped her sit down. I just want to clear my head. Because I'm your wife? It's not like that. Before he could finish, Maxie's fingers suddenly slid across his lap, making the man's whole body jolt. He grabbed his delicate wife's slender wrist. Do you know what you're doing? Maxie didn't answer, directly kissing his lips. His dark eyes swirled with a hazy bewitchment. Step by step, she guided him into the dimness. It was as if a raging fire was searing his heart, creating a tingling sensation. Thinking of this powerful man before her who could slay dragons, now endlessly aroused by her, lost in passion under her fingers. All the dignified composure of a noble lady was thrown to the wind. She didn't even want to communicate. She just wanted to keep this man by her side forever. His breathing was heavy, his throat hoarse. Maxie, you're really going to drive me crazy. He covered her lips with his again. I'll make you never leave me. Although Riftan didn't understand why Maxie suddenly made this choice. but at least she could protect herself, even though he would never let Maxie be in danger. But there's always a chance. His fingers kept tightening, but she wasn't learning magic to protect herself. Even if she wanted to explain, up until now, all she had shown in front of everyone was a frightened, trembling appearance. Even if he wanted to believe her immediately, how many times could he believe it? The current result was already very good. The man placed a kiss on her forehead, still telling her worriedly, "If Ruth asks you to do any strange experiments, you must tell me right away." He won't. He has been teaching me very seriously. At these words, the man's face darkened. After that, Riftan didn't mention magic again, nor did he suddenly appear while she was studying. But the man's actions made Maxie uneasy. She always felt this was all a concession on his part, the matter of her learning magic. The man's mad obsession with his delicate wife. The one involved is blind, the onlooker is clear. Maxie had always believed the man was forced to marry her. She never imagined that all of this might have been his long premeditated plan, because Maxie's training in sensing mana had made no progress. Ruth suggested she train outdoors in a place with abundant nature, as the effect might be better than indoors. Coincidentally, the knights had training today. Although Rudis strongly insisted on accompanying her, Maxie still refused. She looked around, wanting to find a deserted spot, and settled on a corner by the wall. However, after trying a few times, she squatted in the corner, dejected. She was clearly following Ruth's method, but there was still no change, because she wanted to show results quickly and gain Riftan's approval. So, she was a little anxious. But the mana stone in her hand remained calm. It once again crushed the confidence she had worked so hard to build. The hand clutching the mana stone was raised high. A moment later, Maxie came to her senses. To think she wanted to take her anger out on an object. She really was useless. She suddenly felt that maybe Ruth was mistaken. She had no talent at all, but she didn't want to give up. She wanted to go back and see if Ruth had any other methods. "Maxie." She turned her head at the call. She saw Riftan standing behind her. There was a trace of bewilderment in the man's eyes that wasn't there before. "What are you doing here alone?" Learning that she had actually come out alone, Riftan's expression turned serious. "Maxie, the castle isn't absolutely safe either. As the lady of the castle, how could you come alone to such a deserted place?" Knowing the seriousness of the matter, Maxie was the first to apologize. The man tidied the strands of hair at her temples. His tone held a hint of imperceptible tenderness. "Don't make me worry so much." Receiving his delicate wife's obedient reply, he gently placed a kiss on her cheek. The weather was nice, so he decided to take her for a walk by the lake. Seeing his delicate wife's hair messed up by the wind and her sparkling eyes, Riftan smiled dotingly. Surrounded by mountains, the sunlight sparkled on the lake's surface. Maxie couldn't help but stare. She listened as Riftan described his time in the north. In the cold winter, the lake freezes so solid you can walk on it. But this was something Maxie had never experienced. In her memory, ice was just the thin layer that formed on water buckets in the cold winter. For Maxie, Kroiso Castle and Anatole were her entire world, completely different from Riftan's rich and colorful world. The man told her about the places he had been over the years. After returning to the country and receiving his knighthood, he spent most of his time in Anatole and Dristan. She remembered Ruth saying that Riftan had suffered a lot back then to resolve the disputes between the Kroiso Duchy and the south. Maxie suddenly said, "No wonder you used to come to Kroiso Castle so often." So it was to arbitrate disputes. At these words, the man was silent for a moment. He turned his head away, unnaturally. "Did I go that often?" Maxie stated plainly, "Every 2 months at most, sometimes at least once a month." Riftan muttered to himself, "So I did," looking at the man who had suddenly fallen silent. Maxie was confused. "Why did you suddenly stop talking? Did I say something wrong?" The delicate wife the man cherished in his heart thought their marriage was an accident. In fact, it was all his long premeditated plan. The man's act of secretly watching his wife was almost discovered. His feigned, aloof silence, however, made Maxie find his thoughts even more inscrutable. To walk into the man's heart, to glimpse all his thoughts. A crystal snowflake landed on her hand. Seeing her surprised and stunned expression, Riftan realized she was seeing such large snowflakes for the first time. She opened her hand, watching the snowflakes slowly land in her palm. She couldn't help but want to know the feeling of galloping on a horse in the snow. This was a sight she had never seen, something she had never experienced. Her hand on the reins suddenly tightened. To Riftan's astonished gaze, she galloped off. "Maxie, that's dangerous." Before he could finish, the beautiful scene before him captivated him. Heavy snow fell like goose feathers, and the world before him seemed to be cloaked in silver. But it was this person, with her unrestrained, joyful smile, that he couldn't take his eyes off. It couldn't help but remind Riftan of the scene when he secretly watched her from a distance many years ago. A memory he couldn't forget to this day. The winter sun struggled to pierce through the cold air, casting its warmth upon the land. Yet it could never hide the deep desolation that winter brought. Maxie inadvertently glimpsed the man's expression. For a fleeting moment of confusion, why did she feel that she saw vulnerability in the world's most valiant man? Outside, the coldness lingered. Maxie sat by the fireplace, teasing the kitten. Warmth filled the room. Ruth came in with a haggard face. He had thought of a good training method. He brought Maxie outside, preparing to channel magic into her body. This would allow the mana to circulate once through her body. To put it simply, it was a form of cheating. When Ruth began to transfer mana to her, she felt a warm and slightly itchy sensation. It was like a long thread wrapping around her arm and winding into her body. Legend says the first thing God created was light. He told Maxie to remember this feeling. Then he let go and had her practice on her own. She would have to fail and restart countless times. Only after mastering it could she officially begin learning healing magic. Maxie was awakened by a series of calls. She groggily looked at the worried man in front of her. Riftan, he heard she had slept without dinner yesterday and hadn't woken up until now and was very worried. Maxie felt a little guilty. I was just a bit tired from reading for too long. The man gritted his teeth and held her face. I said you could do whatever you want, but I didn't say you could disregard your own body. He forcefully kneaded Maxie's cheeks and pressed his forehead against hers. If this happens again, I'll take back my permission for you to learn magic. Seeing his delicate wife's obedient response, he placed a kiss on her forehead. Before leaving, he invited her to have dinner with him that evening. Since she officially started learning magic, the light that grew brighter with repeated practice made it even harder for her to look away. It had indeed been a long time since she had dinner with Riftan. Thinking of the man's protest, Maxie decided to adjust her schedule for the day. Unexpectedly, Ruth informed her that she had to do an internship today. The man saw the delicate wife he cherished and doted on being mercilessly humiliated by his own subordinate. His fury almost made him see red. The wife-doting demon has no limits. Because her control over mana was still unstable, she was extremely nervous when Ruth suggested an internship. But learning magic requires gaining experience from practical application. The very self-respecting Ruth certainly wouldn't let her practice through self-harm. When he brought Maxie to the training ground, he avoided the satisfaction of a great harvest. Although Maxie didn't say it, he seemed to be able to read her mind. Don't worry, Lord Calypso isn't at the training ground today. Then he looked around for a guinea pig. Heberon sat lazily on a box and teased. Didn't you say not to call you over unless someone was crippled? Ruth presented Maxie with a twirl. Of course I wouldn't take on such a job. The healing will be left to Lady Calypso here. When Ruth said that Maxie was learning magic, Heberon's expression went blank. He carelessly strode toward her. The lady knows magic? When he learned she had just started and wasn't very skilled, he hesitated and scratched his head. The training has been very intense lately. It would be troublesome if there were any side effects. Even with Ruth's promise that healing magic has no side effects, even if it fails, he couldn't help but worry. Ruth, at the end of his patience, started his motor mouth mode. You all know how important a healer is, right? I'm sacrificing my sleeping time now to teach the lady magic. It's for the sake of all of you in the Rem Dragon Knights. The king of verbal battles, his true power is unknown. He gets stronger when facing the strong. Heberon suddenly called out Uslan, who had scratched his face during the earlier sparring, and told him to be the guinea pig. Maxie couldn't help but feel nervous seeing him. After all, ever since she arrived, this knight had never given her a pleasant look. Sure enough, the next second she heard his impatient refusal and even his taunts. I'd rather keep the scar than entrust my face to a second-rate magician. Hearing this, Maxie clasped her hands together. She sincerely begged Uslan to give her a chance. Unexpectedly, he looked at her with a grim face. Do you even know the incantation? His one sentence left Maxie breathless. She gripped the hem of her dress tightly. Just as she mustered the courage to speak, Riftan swept past her like a gust of wind. He grabbed Uslan by the collar and lifted him up. He grimaced in pain. The man's eyes blazed. How dare you speak to my wife like that? He violently threw the man to the ground. Riftan was also held back by the people around him. He sat on the ground, coughing uncontrollably. "Maxie, let's go." Just as he turned to leave, he heard Uslan shout, "Commander, do you have no pride at all?" Because all the suffering endured during the dragon subjugation was because of the Duke of Croiso. He couldn't stand Riften protecting his daughter like this, even refusing the marriage to Princess Agnes for her. Uslan's head was knocked to the side by a punch. Riften was furious at his insolence. The scene descended into chaos. Yet he was still sneering at this moment. "What? Are you going to fight me?" The man, who was gradually losing control of his emotions, stopped after hearing Maxie's voice. The hand holding his collar trembled uncontrollably. He gave him a hard shove and warned, "Don't let me see you disrespect my wife again, or I will definitely split you in two with one strike." The man personally saw his beloved wife being publicly humiliated by his subordinate. His fury almost made him see red. The wife-doting demon has no limits. After the confrontation with Uslan, Riften was silent. This made Maxie, who was following closely behind him, feel somewhat apprehensive. Looking at the small body beside him, shivering with tears in her eyes, he gritted his teeth, suppressing his anger. But then he heard her soft apology. The man's gaze, a mixture of heartache and guilt, was fixed on her. He suddenly bent down and wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." He earnestly promised Maxie, "This kind of thing will never happen again." He held her face in his hands, his tone gentle, causing Maxie's already uneasy heart to completely collapse. A sense of grievance filled her in an instant. But it wasn't Riften's fault that Uslan said those things. It was just because she was that stuttering, foolish, useless, and worthless Maxie. She buried her head in the man's chest, her shoulders shaking with sobs. If she were a noble lady worthy of Riften, this would not have happened. Maxie was still sniffling softly when they returned to the room. The man's concerned expression made her feel a little embarrassed in hindsight, especially since the servants had seen her crying her eyes out earlier, which made her feel even more ashamed. She urged him to go to work. The man took her slender hand. His large hand gently stroked her long hair. "I will definitely warn Uslan." Looking at her eyes that seemed to hold a stormy sea, he gently placed a kiss in her palm. "Maxie, you're the person I care about most in this world." A knock on the door from outside forced him to temporarily abandon comforting his delicate wife. Watching him leave, Maxie knew that if a noble lady encountered such a situation, she would righteously demand an apology. But she was different. She was afraid of Riften finding out and tried hard to hide it. But he would find out one day, even if he never found out. A woman despised by his own subordinates would surely make him feel ashamed. Maxie ran out of the room hastily. She wanted to do something to change the situation, not just stand here doubting herself. She suddenly pushed open the library door and came face to face with Ruth. Caught completely off guard, he was startled. Looking at the breathless Maxie, he waved his hand. "Did something happen to you first?" He then explained that when Maxie left, he had wanted to follow. However, Riften's menacing expression made him give up the idea. Maxie wrung her hands. "Uslan's injury isn't serious, is it?" Ruth sighed deeply. "I think Lord Calypso was already holding back." He scratched his head in embarrassment, apologizing to Maxie for what had happened. He had thought the knight's attitude towards her had improved a lot, which was why he brought her over directly without any preparation. Although Ruth said that Uslan must also be regretting it now, judging from his expression at the time, he probably wouldn't feel such regret. Ruth said seriously, "It might be hard for you to believe, but although he is harsh, he is a loyal knight, and he used to worship Riften more blindly than anyone." It was only after he refused the marriage to Princess Agnes that Uslan began to oppose him in everything. Although hesitant, Ruth still said it. Uslan comes from a prestigious family. He is the most loyal to the royal family among the Remdragon Knights. The story of him pledging an oath to the princess at his knighting ceremony is also widely known. Maxie was a little confused. So he wants the princess and Riften to get married? Actually, everyone in the Remdragon Knights thought so, because not only did they work well together, they also looked good together. So when Riften refused the marriage, everyone found it hard to understand. Ruth told her this hoping she could persuade Riften. After all, a tense atmosphere in the Knight Order for a long time is not a good thing. Although Ruth kept emphasizing that apart from Uslan, the other knights didn't have such a strong animosity towards her. But it was indeed because of her that Riften had to endure discord with the royal family, and the knights would be dissatisfied with the situation. Uslan's dislike for her would not just disappear. If Riften used his fist to shut someone up every time they insulted her, it wouldn't really solve the problem. But if she looked at Ruth with a determined gaze, can your magic cure me? The delicate wife the man cherished in his heart, who thought their marriage was an accident, was actually his long premeditated plan. Love after marriage, feeling the mutual devotion. To become someone worthy of him, Maxie took the initiative to ask if Ruth's magic could cure her stutter. Seeing him frozen in place, she thought her request was too fanciful. Although many have researched magic for deafness, blindness, and lameness, so far, there's no magic that can provide a permanent cure. Maxie, having received the answer, nodded with some disappointment. Feeling a bit embarrassed, she hastily explained and was about to get up and leave. Ruth waved his hand to make her stay. He was silent for a moment, then spoke hesitantly. Have you ever thought about correcting your stutter yourself? Pronunciation and speech habits can be corrected through training. Maxie stood up emotionally. She had practiced countless times in deserted corners, but there was still no effect. Maxie, who had always buried these things in her heart, had tears in her eyes, feeling that he spoke so lightly, as if he was negating all the effort she had put into it. Ruth fell into thought and sighed. Haven't you noticed that recently, except when you're too flustered, you speak much more smoothly than before? Maxie's mind went blank. She suddenly thought that since coming to Anatole, whether with the servants attending to her or the knights in the order, or in her interactions with Rifdan, without her even realizing it, her stutter had been getting better little by little. It was only now that Ruth pointed it out that she belatedly noticed. Ruth gave her a few suggestions. Try to stay calm. You can speak a little slower. He also promised to look for other correction methods. Maxie silently committed them to memory. With hope, it seemed the world in her eyes became brighter. The boy trembling before her was the new magic practice subject Ruth had found for Maxie, confidently assuring her that everyone welcomed him. Maxie's eyes were sharp with suspicion. She carefully unwrapped the bandage on his hand. She gently held his hand, concentrating to calm her own nervousness. A warm light filled the space between them and flowed out slowly. In an instant, the wound on the little boy's hand was healed. The crowd let out a gasp of amazement. Maxie also looked at her hands in disbelief, not expecting to succeed on the first try. Her confidence instantly soared. Who else is injured? I can still do it. Heberon and Gable walked in. They apologized to her for the previous incident. Heberon held up a small cut on his hand for Maxie to heal. Seeing the wound that was about to heal on its own, her expression was dazed. Sensing their intention, Maxie couldn't help but feel her heart fill with warmth. This feeling of being able to help put her at ease. Time passed quickly. As the first winter snow arrived in Anatole, Maxie looked haggard. She suddenly found that there were endless things to do. Her gaze shifted. She saw the poems on the table that Ruth had prepared for her correction practice. When Rifdan came in, he heard her muttering, not knowing what she was saying. Maxie was startled when she saw him. She hastily covered the practice poems. The man looked at the messy documents on the table and fell into thought. Do you have too much work? He sighed and pulled Maxie's small body into his arms. He placed a kiss on her forehead, then scooped her up in his arms. He gently placed her on the bed. None of the women I know are as thin as you. Just looking at you, I worry you'll be blown away by the wind. His casual words stung her heart. Who were those women? She burrowed into the quilt. You're exaggerating. The man held her hand and pecked it twice. Then he caressed her cheek. But Maxie, you really have lost a lot of weight. Seeing that she still wanted to explain, he swiftly reached out and tucked her into the quilt, thoughtfully covering her and patting it. He covered her eyes. Sleep, Maxie. You need a rest. The delicate wife the man cherished in his heart, while slowly opening up to him through their interactions, also finally met Princess Agnes, who had once been discussed for marriage with her husband. Elysian, with one side of his face covered in blood, cheerfully greeted Maxie. A winter rain had made the training ground exceptionally slippery, causing him to accidentally fall from his horse during his riding lesson. Seeing the three of them still leisurely chatting, Maxie couldn't help but worry. She firmly grabbed his arm and pulled him aside. Then, she was taken to have lunch with them. Gable said that Rifdan was discussing the subjugation plan and countermeasures for the migration of northern monsters. Maxie also learned about the Rim Dragon Knight's initiation ceremony. Only by obtaining a dragon's mana stone before the knighting ceremony would one be recognized as one of them. Maxie couldn't imagine sending two 17-year-old boys to catch such a terrifying monster. The worry she showed made Elysian and the other a little excited. Facing the trial is a necessary path to becoming a full-fledged knight. As soon as Rifdan sat down next to Maxie, the knights on both sides moved away on their own. Maxie couldn't help but sneak a peek, seeing the man's natural relaxation. She stood up. "I'm a little tired. Please excuse me." She looked at the noisy atmosphere in the dining hall. Her eyes lowered. She hoped that one day she could also blend in. After the long winter rain, Anatole welcomed the wet season. Maxie began preparations to decorate the courtyard. The number of visitors was slowly increasing. Before that, the desolate courtyard had to be decorated. After all, it was the face of the castle. While Maxie was thinking, she was called to the office by Riftan. This was the first time she had set foot in here. She looked around with some curiosity. The man had called her mainly to inform her of something. He scratched his hair. In the next few weeks, 20 to 30 guests from the royal capital will be visiting. Maxie needed to arrange rooms and hold a simple welcoming ceremony. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "What kind of guests?" Riften looked up at her. "Probably an inspection team sent by King Reuben, Knights of the Royal Line," and, hearing the pause in his words, Maxie looked up in confusion. Riften pursed his lips. "Princess Agnes." The name landed squarely, unexpectedly drilling into Maxie's ears. Although Riftan said she was probably just coming on official inspection, as he had some acquaintance with Agnes, Maxie still felt a wave of dizziness. Her hands clenched unconsciously. She forced herself to accept the task. "Is there anything else to prepare?" Riften stared at her for a long time. "Just tell the maids to entertain them well. You don't have to worry about anything else." Maxie forced a pale smile. She couldn't understand why a princess who was once discussed for marriage with Riftan would be sent to inspect such a distant territory. But for her, the most important thing right now was, considering the arrival time of the inspection team, there was far from enough time to renovate the castle. Work must begin immediately. By the time Ruth appeared with a stack of documents, Maxie was already exhausted. He had also heard about King Reuben sending people for an inspection. He knew that Maxie might not have time to study magic in the near future. However, her defensive magic and correction exercises were already showing initial results. So that she wouldn't slack off, he had specially prepared more materials. He proudly told Maxie to recite them 20 times every morning and evening without fail. This would help her speak more fluently. At these words, Maxie was instantly petrified. After many days of hard work by everyone, Calip's castle had a brand new look. And finally, the inspection team arrived. A blonde, blue-eyed woman stood at the forefront. "It's a pleasure to meet you. I am Agnes Drazina Rubin." Maxie also introduced herself gracefully. "I hope your stay in Anatole will be comfortable and pleasant." As the wet season passed, the vibrant spring arrived, and Maxie finally met the legendary Princess Agnes.